Consistency is always key. The reason you have consistency is because you want to become part of your audience's life. Hey friends, welcome back to The Christian Podcaster. As always, I'm your host, Eric Nevins. Thank you so much for being here. Deeply grateful that you are. We got a great conversation for you today. But first, this is the official podcast of Christian Podcasters Association. We help you, if you're a believer in and you have a podcast of any kind, whether it's for your business or just a Christian podcast, there to help people grow in their faith or whatever it is. We're here to help you. That is what we do at Christian Podcasters Association. We also connect you. If you're not in the free Facebook group, you should be there. Join us, come hang out. And we have a whole bunch of other things that we can do and share with you as well. But that's the first step. All right, today, first of all, I want to welcome our co-host, Amy Fritz. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. It's good to be here.
Good to see you again. We got to hang out at Podcast Movement last week. That was really fun.
Yes. First time ever I got to see you in person. So it was fun.
I know. And it was fun because you came down to my little office and you were
I
like,
got to see now. And now I'm remembering, like, I know where this is made now.
I know where he is. Yeah. I know where the sausage is. It's not as glamorous as you thought probably, but that's all right.
The best part though, was that you made barbecue.
Yeah.
Ribs and barbecue, and your wife made this amazing dessert, and we got to meet a bunch of other really awesome podcasters. It was so fun.
It was delightful. First time I've ever had the chance to have CPA people in my backyard, which I was really excited about. So, and I was glad that you were a part of it. So that was fun. We did record an episode at Podcast Movement. That'll be coming up once I get access to it. I haven't received it yet, but when we do, we got to talk to a bunch of people. In case you couldn't come, most of you I know couldn't. We talked to a whole bunch of our CPA folks, brought them into the booth and said, hey, what did you learn? What's something you're going to actually take action on? So look for that. That's coming up. Today, though, we're going to talk about how to maximize your time when podcasting part-time, right? Because most of us, I get to do podcasting and help podcasters for a living, but most of us don't get to do that. And I recognize that it takes a while to build your audience. I was doing my show part-time, until I could get to a place where we could do that. So it's a thing, right? And it's sometimes I think is something that people are overwhelmed by, right? That podcasting takes a lot of time. How have you had any struggles with that, Amy? Like, is there
Absolutely. It is a thing. Like if we were to do the numbers on the number of people that podcast on the side, huge majority of podcasters, would be doing something else to pay their bills, but they're also podcasting because they love it. So
right.
It's something that applies to basically everybody that listens to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me is that I'm trying to fit it in little cracks here and there, and having to switch brain spaces and switch context throughout the day because, not only am I doing it part-time, but I'm doing all of it. Right? I'm doing, right. I got to think like an editor. I got to think like an audio person. I got to think like a writer. I got to think like a marketer. So it's a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to that. And it can be a little bit overwhelming, particularly when you're doing all those things. Yeah. So I get that. All right. I think there are a few options for things that we can do. And, but I'm going to boil it all down to one big answer. Look at this. We're only, 3 minutes in. We're going to give you the big answer right here. Ready? Here's the answer.
I'll see if I do this. I want to know if I do any of these things that you say.
I think the answer is batching.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think there's multiple ways to do batching because there's not one size fits all. It depends on your life, how your life works. So let's talk about those kind of two things. And I know you'll have some things to chime in here as well. First of all, I think, so I said there's two ways to batch, and I think there's a fast way and there's a slow way.
Okay.
So we can talk about it that way, right? Okay. So the fast way, should we start fast or slow? I would let you choose. Where should we start?
Let's start with the slow way. I want to know what the slow way is.
Slow way. Okay. This is what I currently do. And I think maybe a lot of people too. And even I gotta admit, I don't really do it all that well at the moment. I accidentally started 4 businesses, so I'm
this is true, very true,
very busy and not focusing on this as much. But this is how I would do the slow way for podcasting. I would choose basically carve out at least, let's say, 2 hours every week at the right time, or maybe 2 blocks of 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it that way. Okay, so we're looking at 4 hours a week, maybe. It could be 2 hours on the weekend, 2 hours on a weeknight when you're able to get away, something like that. And during one of those blocks, you're going to record sessions, right? Record episodes. So if you have a solo show, you might have to write them and record them. If you have a guest show, you would record. So you would set up your Calendly. So that's the time when people can book to record. And I do this. I've been doing this for years. I actually just switched this, but I only record for a long time. It was Wednesday. Now it's Thursday. I actually have Thursday and Friday open. But if it was just Wednesday, there would be spots on Wednesday. And then there were only 2 spots every Wednesday. People could sign up for a variety of different times. Every day, Wednesday looked a little bit different, but there were 2 spots. And so if I filled up a whole month with 2 spots, then I had 8 episodes recorded, right? Okay, so that's part of it. You got to leave a little bit of room. So maybe you need some extra time for preparation, depending on what you do. And I don't know, like if you're reading all the books, so that maybe that's extra time, but your recording time, carve it out and you got that time. That's when people show up and you're ready. So you're in the groove, right? You show up ready. So on Wednesday, I would show up and go, okay, I'm ready to record and do my thing. I know I'm in that mindset. I'm ready to go.
And that's the beauty of batching, is that you're choosing one particular type of thing you're doing during this time, and you're filling up that time with that task. Right. It's not like switching from task to task to task. You're like, this is recording day. These are recording hours, not editing hours, right? Like this is the one thing you're doing during that time. And like, since you're in the groove, you're not getting in and out of that mind space, and you're not having to make the decision over and over again of whether you're doing it or not doing it. It's already, the decision is made. You're in that brain space, and that is what you are doing during that time. So there's magic to that for sure.
I think there is. I found that very valuable because now after doing that for multiple years, I can go, I know what I'm doing when I show up to those things, because it's just, I'm ready. Like I can flip that switch, and then away we go.
I like it because it sounds like you're talking about 2 things that I think that make sense together. People maybe have heard of time blocking. And I think the idea of time blocking and batching are very similar. It's like you have like set aside certain time for certain things on your calendar, and that is the thing you're doing during that time. And I find if I don't do that, I'll sit down to work and I'll always put off the same thing. I'll always kick the same thing down the road, and I will never get to it because there is never a time that's like dedicated. Right. It ends up being at the bottom of my list every time. So I'm like leaning in and listening to you here.
Exactly. Okay. So then the other time block that you need to make is a production time. Yeah. Right. So I would actually do this also on Wednesdays for a long time. Now it seems to be like Saturday for whatever reason. I'm busy Monday through Friday, but so I'll carve out some time on Saturday, and that will be my production time where I will edit my episodes, and I can do several, in a 2 or 3 hour block typically. Maybe 1 or 2 in that time. But then then it's the same deal, right? You're in the headspace. You're in like the editing production phase where you're going to go and create your artwork and create everything and do literally everything.
Keep your butt in the chair and just keep doing it. Yeah.
Including I schedule my email, and I schedule 2 emails. So we could talk about this whole process, I guess, maybe sometime, but I schedule an email to go to my list, right? To say, hey, there's a new episode out for you. And then I schedule an email to the guest, and I use a Spark, is called for Spark email. Okay. And it lets me schedule them in advance. So I can just schedule it and it'll go out and I never have to think about it again all at the same time.
I love it. I love that. So is that a combination of the fast and the slow, but this is the slow batching?
No, this is slow.
Okay.
So
this is slow batching.
So then what I try to do is I try to do 2 episodes a week. And the reason I recorded 2 episodes, I've edited 2 episodes. And the reason I try to do that is because One will replace the episode that I did this week, and one will get me ahead. And if you do that consistently, week after week after week, you will slowly get further and further ahead until you can take a whole month off or however long you want.
Is there a certain amount ahead you are like, this is enough ahead? I don't want to be any farther ahead than this. Or have you ever?
I'm getting there, actually. Okay. I have like 15 or 16 episodes in the can right now. So I actually need to do some fast way here, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit, because they're just kind of piling up. But I don't know. That's going to really depend on your show. If your show is current events focused,
you can't do that.
Probably don't want to do that. You need to be probably closer to time of production. But if it's evergreen content, man, go for it. The only trouble is I ran into this yesterday. I interviewed a woman, great story. She has a book coming out in October. And will her show come out in October? I don't know. I may have to finesse some things to see if I can help her out with that, to have the show actually be valuable for what she's trying to do. So you got to kind of watch out for that as well a little bit.
All right. I'm dying to know what the fast way is.
Okay.
The fast way?
Here's the fast way.
Because that feels like pretty productive to me. That feels like
that's
a good groove.
I think it is, but it's more doable. You've got a couple of time blocks and you can do it, and you slowly get further and further ahead. The fast way, I've only done one time. And it was at a time when I had like this, I had 2 episodes a week recorded for like 2 or 3 months. And I had so many, I had like 15 episodes in the can, kind of like I do now. And I took a whole week and I just did nothing but editing and scheduling that week.
Wow.
I would do 2
So like
or
a really
3
dedicated, more than just an hour or 2 in a week, but like a huge several days, like all I'm going to do is get ahead.
I think for like 8 days, I scheduled 2 episodes a day.
Recording new episodes or like producing?
Like editing, doing the production work, editing, artwork, emails, and I had it all scheduled out for like 15 weeks.
What'd you learn?
I took the entire month of August off.
I'm curious of what you learned from how much you could handle. Like what was your limit of like, at what point did your brain say, okay, that's enough of that? Like, where's the line?
Yeah. 2 episodes a day was probably the most I wanted to do, but sometimes I would do 3 if I was really like, hey, I'm trying to push to get through. But my show's always so different every single episode that it was fun, but there's always patterns. And so you see a lot of patterns, things come through. I think it was hard to name every episode like that. You know what I mean? To go, what's this one about? And how's that different than other stuff I've done? And, what are the things? So that came up a little bit, trying to find something that wasn't too repetitive or getting old.
Yeah. I mean, I've never done the like dedicated, I've had ideas, like dreams of like, okay, I'm going to like get ahead enough so that I actually can get ahead more on another week. So you have to be at least a little bit ahead in order to take time away to do it. Unless you're okay with there being like a silent week or 2 on your podcast, which maybe that's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. But there's value to continuing to show up in people's feed, how they are expecting you to be there, especially if you haven't told them, hey, I'm taking, summer off or whatever. Yeah.
I don't think so. I have taken breaks. I sometimes do that. But I think if you're doing a large amount of shows all at once, you're going to schedule one and then you're going to schedule the next one, and you just kind of let it keep piling up the week after week after week. And so you may not even have to have a break. It's just that you're getting ahead as you go.
Well, we learned at Podcast Movement that the always on shows, which doesn't mean that they're like white noise in the background, which my husband asked if that's what it meant. With always on was like podcasting 24 hours a day. No, the ones that are like consistently not taking time off are the ones that are actually, I mean, it makes sense that they have more downloads because they have more shows, but they actually have people that show up more consistently to listen because they know they're going to be there. Yeah.
Right. Which is the thing. I feel like these days it's not quite as preached as much as it used to be when I first started. Consistency is always key. But the reason you have consistency, right? Nobody ever talks about that.
Sure. What's the reason?
The reason you have consistency is because you want to become part of your audience's life.
Right. Or they're like,
right?
oh, it's Wednesday. It's podcast day.
Right. I remember
Or it's
very
the first
clearly
Wednesday
when
of the month. It's podcast day.
Exactly. When I worked at bank jail, so one of my people would do, they would do, I can't remember who I was listening to. I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Michael Hyatt or Cliff Ravenscraft or one of those guys, but they would release episodes on Thursdays. And I was thrilled for Thursdays, right?
Yeah.
I would get to work. I'd be like, it's Thursday. I got to get through today. Oh, wait, there's a new episode today probably of, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why that's even why I chose the day I chose, because I was like, oh, some podcasts I listen to release on Wednesdays. You know, I listen to the podcast and they say on Wednesdays we podcast. On Wednesdays we podcast. Nice. And so I was like, all right, on Wednesdays I'm going to have a podcast too. So
yeah. So that was kind of my, like, anyway, so that's the whole idea. And so if you have more shows, right? So this is kind of maybe off topic, but if you have more shows, then you can become a bigger part of someone's life. You can do that. So that's the advantage there. But so I think even if you're not taking if you need to take a break, get ahead.
Yeah.
Right. Don't just take time. Record your episodes, schedule them out. This is the beauty of the internet, right? You can schedule things out. You can even schedule your social media. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of our promotion processes in a future episode, but that can all be, almost everything can be scheduled in advance.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that there's a slower and a faster way to do it, because there are people that are going to say, Eric, you mentioned at the front, like this is a side gig for many of us. We don't have a whole week to dedicate to getting ahead. So, but you're saying everybody has a little bit of cracks of time that they can dedicate it to getting ahead, like batching work.
Yes. So if you were like, so you can do that and you can do a couple and just do it the slow way, do 2 episodes a week, record 2, edit 2, you'll slowly get ahead. Or if you're all or nothing, like sometimes I am, that's part of my personality. Yep. I think honestly in the last few years, I figured out probably is a little ADHD where I'm like, I just hyper focus on things. That is okay. And so sometimes I need to go, I'm just going to do that for a while. I super hyper focus and I'm in on that. And then I'm ahead. And then I can take, I think that year I took like the whole month of August off.
Okay.
I love to take the whole month of December off for my show, but even having things going, but then I don't have to really record, and I'll often block off. I'm not going to do any interviews. But you know what always happens every single time when I do that? I get excited when I get a little nervous when I like start doing episodes again, like in January, like, oh, and they'll kind of be a little nerve wracking because I haven't done it for
and you're ready. I feel like if I ever take a break or if I'm ever doing something where I am not regularly recording because stuff is like happening, I'm always like ready to get back to it and like excited about like getting in and doing the creative process again. Emily P. Freeman talks about needing a long runway for certain parts of kinds of work. And so I think it really works well with batching. If it like takes you a while to get into the groove of a certain type of work, it only makes sense that you would like set aside a good amount of time to do it. Because if it's going to take you an hour to get your brain in the space, you don't want to just have like 2 hours of that every month, because you're not going to be able to make the most of like this runway 100%. That you created. So if you can create a runway for yourself to get into that space, it's really helpful.
Right. Yeah. Try to do that. So that's a good point. Figure out what you need, right, in order to get into that kind of mindset and space and to be ready, and then create that time. So it doesn't have, you don't have to be like me where you have 2, like on a Wednesday or something. That might work. That works for me. But maybe you need something 2 hours together, or 2 or 3 hours together, and you can carve that out. And I don't know how I know all relationships and families are different, right? But my wife was really supportive of that when I had to do that before. A lot of times for me, it was Sunday night and, everybody's chilling anyway. Nobody cares what dad was doing in the basement.
Yeah. And I mean, you can tell your people in your life how interruptible a certain thing is that you're working on, right? Like there are certain things we batch and we are working on in the production process that it doesn't matter if like our kid comes in and they're working on their homework in the corner of the room. It doesn't matter if I'm like tweaking the audio on something, or I'm cutting some content, like, or making social
Right.
media assets, interruptible. I can sit in
Yep.
the living room and do some of that things while the world is happening around me. But then it is good to have that conversation that says, this certain time, I'm going to like have some extra dedicated time. There's a sign on the door that says, you know, on the air for this number
Yep.
of hours. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay. Well, so those are my thoughts on batching and kind of fitting your podcast into your life. I think it can be done.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of determination, a little bit of maybe juggling to get the space in there. And if you care about it, you're not too busy for it, right?
Yeah.
You'll find the time to do that.
I have used that. So I'd say, look at your calendar and say, what day or what hours am I just going to say, this is when I'm interviewing? Right. What day or what hours are this is when I'm really heads down editing, or this is when I'm going to do a bunch of social media assets. Like I'm going to make a whole bunch of like templates, and like, cause I know that I can do this. And once that's done, then all I do is like drop in a few things. It's like magic.
I love that. Okay. I got to ask you this though. Okay. Have you ever had anybody say those times don't work for me?
Well, if it doesn't, you see if you can make an adjustment. Like, if you have a whole bunch of times people to choose from, they will choose a whole bunch of times. If you only have a couple times people have to choose from, they will choose from those, or they will say, oh, I can't do that. And then you're like, well, I really want to interview them. And so they're like, then you say, let's talk about it then. Like, how can we make it work? So
you can be more flexible. Okay, that's good. So I asked that because that was one of my fears going in when I first started only recording on Wednesday, only during the day, like during business hours, right? I thought, oh man, maybe some people won't be able to do that or whatever. Never had a problem. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody say, hey, can you know, I'm trying to, whatever, I'm more open on Thursday. Okay, then I can make an adjustment. But almost never has that even come up.
What I think,
I'm so surprised.
Here's why I think that might be. I think most cases when people are working with you, they know that, and in podcasters in general, a podcaster is doing their guest a favor in many situations to share the message of their guest, share the book that their guest is promoting, something about them that they want the message to be out. And so the podcast host is like paying a hosting fee to share someone else's information and edit it and put together social media things. So I think there is an understanding for some people like, oh yeah, Eric's doing this for me too. And so I don't want to make it any harder for him. So if I can just take my lunch break at a certain time instead and do this, all the better. Yeah.
Interesting. People have been accommodating. Also, so maybe this is actually a good tip here. Have let people schedule pretty far in advance, like up to 6 months in advance. So which is a long time, that's really a long time. But if somebody schedules a couple of months in advance, like I have one now for October already, that's okay. Right. Yeah. Like that's then they can organize their life and they can be prepared. That's why I have reminders, by the way, on my calendar.
Yes.
7 weeks or 7 days in advance, one a day in advance, and one an hour before, just to remind them, because I really don't like getting stood up. So
I get it. I use Calendly the same way. So
love it. Okay. So that's a great tool. Hopefully, friends, if you're not using Calendly or some sort of scheduler, you should. We can talk about that. If you want us to talk about that, talk about more there, let us know.
We can talk about tools.
Leave a comment. That would be good. Amy, thanks a lot. I think we want to encourage our friends to join us in CPA Gold.
Come join us.
We have some cool things coming up soon, I believe. We just had Richard Clark come on, and that was pretty amazing conversation. We may get him on the show here shortly.
Yeah, one of our gold members has been in there for a while, Michelle Rayborn. She's going to speak to us soon, and I cannot wait to hear her journey as a podcaster, what she's learning, and all that. It's going to be so great.
Love it. And looks like we have a session on monetization as well coming up. So
we do. We have, we're going to talk about ads. We're going to talk about.
Perfect. That will be good. I'm looking forward to it. Amy, thanks so much for being here. Friends, you can go, once again, I want to make a call to just, if you're not in the Facebook group at Christian Podcasters Association, get there, and you can always join CPA Gold. this is the community that we have to help you just grow your show into the vision that you had for it when you first started. That's at ChristianPodcastersAssociation.com/gold. Can't wait to see you. We will see you there. See you next time.